How's it going? Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, to a fantastic video today. I'm so excited to just give you this review of MindsEye, my early MindsEye review. I'm very excited about this one, that's for sure, because oh boy, this is quite a juicy piece. I've gotta say that. But I'm not gonna just crap all over this game because there's a lot of misinformation out there around this game. Now, I've spent literally days and days and days of doing heavy research, covering the preview event, but do bear in mind that I can only talk about what I've seen, and I can't talk about absolutely everything, or I can't show certain gameplay off until the game is out, so do bear that in mind. And of course, this is not sponsored by them or anything like that. This is a completely honest, objective take, and I'm gonna try and be as fair as possible, but critical as well, because there are moments in AAA gaming nowadays where basically marketing and the actual game itself are completely, just opposites of each other. They are completely fabrications of the actual truth. And I always believe, with my own personal philosophy and anything that I analyze, media that I love, that an objective reality is most important, to look at things objectively and to study them, as what they actually are, without getting our personal feelings attached to it, okay? That's a very stoic point of view, I guess, but I do think it's important for media analysis as well. But basically, I will tell you if I have a bias towards certain things, and that's how I like to shape my reviews. I'm going to do positives and negatives, like I do with all of my early access reviews, and then you can weigh up the choice if it's worth, the risk to check it out or not, because I believe this is going for $60, so it's not going to be a ridiculous, over-the-top priced game like $80, but it is still a AAA game, but it's not necessarily AAA in its gameplay, okay? Let's just say that. Now, I do believe it's very important to cover this MindsEye review early access, because a lot of people will be pre-ordering this game, and then when they get the game and they find, oh, I've been bamboozled and this is not the game I expected, well, that's why, doing early access reviews are important, in my opinion, so that's what I try and provide you. So if you like that type of thing, and deep, yearly analytical reviews around games that I truly am passionate about as well, and philosophical content, I blend all of those different videos together on my channel to give you something new. So do consider subscribing, become a wise one today, join this fantastic community. It's not like anything else out there, and I really do try and provide value to you. So with enough blabbing out of the way, let's get on with this MindsEye review. Now, the first positive of MindsEye, and I'm going to start off with a positive because there's a lot to say about this game that isn't necessarily positive, but I do want to highlight the music. The soundtrack in this game is juicy, okay? It's very, very good. It reminds me of, like Deus Ex, and actually very much inspired by GTA, but like a more futuristic GTA kind of soundtrack when you're, just playing in the combat missions. That does sound exactly almost like GTA 5, but with much more of the synthy tone to it. And as someone who composes, music for video games, I've done a soundtrack for a futuristic game before. Check out my music on Spotify if you're interested. But I just have to say that they've nailed the ambience of this kind of future dystopia that's not far away from our own reality, with cybernetics, and especially kind of capturing that Dubai kind of hellscape of just, hyper-capitalism and consumerism. And Dubai does look like a hellhole in real life, to be honest, and it's basically captured that essence, and I just think the music has done a really good job of capturing the overall vibe of MindsEye, so I do want to give it credit. The next positive is the setting, the overall, world building of this game. I think, like I said, it's very interesting. It's got a unique blend of, drone gameplay where you access, some robots for your advantage, or for, your detective type missions when you're kind of when you're looking around for information and gathering information. And it also feeds into that stealth gameplay loop, which I really like. but I just like the setting here. You know, it's a mixture of that kind of GTA gameplay, but with flying cars and stuff like that. But the world itself doesn't necessarily feel alive, and I'll talk about that more later. But the world building is rather interesting to me. You know, the city itself can look good at times if the, you know, actual consoles that I've seen being used on this game actually can run it well, which it can't. And like I said, you know, they're being very cagey, the developers, about this game. They're not letting us have full review access at this point. So it's very kind of deceiving what they're putting out there, and I do want to make that point clear. But, you know, the city itself does actually look good at times, but there is a lot of graphical, you know, like hiccups, you could say, and I'm going to touch on that in a bit. But overall, I do like the atmosphere. I do think that is a net positive. The city itself does look good, the art direction, all that kind of stuff. It's also captured that cyberpunk feel mixed with Deus Ex, with its world design, where you have the main city, and then you have a lot of countryside area, kind of the Badlands, if you will, for the more kind of chaos, you know, kind of wastelander missions, where anything goes, as it were. But then some buildings you can actually enter, but these are only in missions, okay? Don't be expecting to walk into any building. This is not GTA 5, that's for goddamn sure. This is like a GTA 5 in alpha or something. This is honey, we have GTA at home, okay? So, you know, come and save your bacon, because mama needs feeding. Also, it does actually have elements of cyberpunk in its gameplay as well. I can't really talk about it exactly, but there are elements, I'll say, without actually saying what it is, of brain dances, where, you know, if you've played Cyberpunk, you know what that means. Basically, with the brain dance in Cyberpunk, you won't always be one single character. You will actually get to experience through different perspectives and stuff like that, and that's all I can really say. The story itself is quite interesting as well. You know, it's got that Deus Ex flair to it, that conspiracy that you're trying to unravel, which I really like. I really love that kind of storytelling, where it's a mystery and you have to piece it together and you can't even trust your own organization and stuff like that. And it's basically having flashbacks and access to memories that necessarily aren't, you know, his own, and you've got to kind of piece that mystery together. Okay, so now let's get into some negatives, because there is sure a ton of goddamn negatives to this game, and that's why I really want to emphasize that you should be very cautious if you are interested in this game and wait for it to be released, and in my opinion, wait for it to be heavily patched and updated if they ever do that, or they just run away with the money, or just, you know, wait for a deep sale, because this is basically similar to situations like Redfall, I think it was called, the Saints Row remake and stuff like that, which is kind of a shame because the story here is actually quite interesting to me. It's not like cringe writing or anything like that. It's quite, you know, a well-told story from what I've seen, and the cutscenes are very impressive, which I'll talk about more in a minute, but the actual gameplay itself is where this game just falls completely flat. So let's just first talk about some of the animations in this game. It's so goddamn clunky. Getting in and out of cover is completely broken, to say the least. You know, you will just snap into cover, and you can break it with your, you know, reloading and stuff like that. It just looks absolutely terrible. It plays absolutely terrible. And the shooting is the most goddamn basic thing I think I've ever played. It's like early concept of a Xbox 360 game, and I know that sounds very brutal. I love that time period of gaming, but games have evolved since then, and we do want more complicated game design, you know, combat ability, stuff like that. Maybe that comes later on as you unlock, you know, more stuff, but the basic core combat doesn't feel good. It's very floaty. The AI is completely brain dead. They don't really get into cover much. They just kind of stand out in the open. The difficulty can sometimes spike for no goddamn reason, and actually in the preview event itself, they had to use God mode to basically complete a mission, which I've never seen anything like that before, so that's pretty crazy stuff. And you know, usually preview events, they just allow you to play the game and someone's over your shoulder and kind of tells you, you know, what's going on, unless if it's like a digital thing. And I've only experienced that, you know, a couple of times at events and stuff, but it's just a complete shit show, basically, the gameplay. And then we get to a bigger negative, which is the performance of this game, okay? So FPS drops, you know, maybe that's gonna get patched, but at the moment it looks quite terrible, and there's a reason why they're holding off, you know, certain access. But the biggest thing that I really have to say is the world itself feels like it's kind of stitched together. So just like when Cyberpunk first released, it was kind of a buggy, broken mess. I think MindsEye is going to be a similar tale, where it's not a bad game, actually it has good bones, but it's going to take a long time for them to actually get to their vision. And I have no idea why they're rushing it. Also, there's been reports of, the directors and stuff like that, the people working on the game jumping ship before the game gets released, which is not a good sign. But just the fact that performance is quite terrible, everything has this kind of blurry haze on it, like the anti-aliasing is just kind of broken, and you get like this kind of hazy effect on everything, which doesn't look good obviously, and the LOD is quite terrible, and just the animations of everything that you do, like getting in and out of your vehicle, driving around, it's just not that good.
You fucking...
The next negative is just the marketing of this game. I think they did an absolutely terrible job of marketing this game. In trailers and gameplay, it's made to look like it's an open world, action-adventure story game. But actually this is a linear, very linear in most of the time. But actually this is mostly a linear game, and it is a heavy story focused game. And I do like, single player focused experiences with a linear story. Actually it's very refreshing, and it's quite unique that they're, doing that kind of setting but in an open environment. But don't expect the world to be alive, to it be brimming with activities and stuff like that. It's not that type of experience. You take a mission and then you go do that mission. And I think the idea is that players eventually will build their own content in this world space. But the world itself is pretty much dead. There are cars around, there are flying vehicles as well. You do see NPCs on the street and stuff like that. But none of it is truly interactive, as it were. So you do have to really set your expectations, and they did a terrible job marketing. And that's the problem with AAA gaming, as I see it today, is we can't trust AAA gaming anymore like we used to. A lot of games get released, unfinished or just in a buggy state. Or a big thing to do is kind of like with crypto and cryptocurrency and stuff like that. It's kind of a rug pull where they show something that looks completely different, marketing and everything like that, and then they can hide it behind saying that it's like not finished gameplay, but actually it's a completely different version of the game, just like with Redfall, and then it's literally a completely different game. I'm not saying that this game is a scam. It's not like that previous game that came out which literally was a scam, that zombie game, but I just think that they are being deliberately deceptive with their marketing, and we have to stop and we have to stop supporting AAA games and developers and companies that do this type of thing. That's the only way the industry is going to get better, but it just seems to get worse and worse with time, and bigger companies are always doing this, and that's the scary thing, because gaming never used to be about this. And if we unify that, then gaming culture can get better. There'll be less distrust between the gamers and the developers and companies behind it. Just going back to showing what the game is and having it finished on release. We really need to get back to that state of gaming. Okay, so now on to another positive of MindsEye, and like I said, I do want to try and be fair in this MindsEye review and give you a balanced approach of positives and negatives, even though I do think this mostly stands at a negative, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a negative forever. That's the kind of sad thing about this game, is it does have potential. And maybe if you're the type of gamer who really doesn't mind a lot of jank and very basic gameplay systems, and you're more in it for the story, then it might actually be okay for some people. And I want to preface that because, usually you need good gameplay as well for a game to stand, up. So now let's get on to another positive for this game, because in this MindsEye game review, like I said, we do have to try and be fair, because a lot of people crap over games because it's a popular thing to do. You have to understand that the gaming industry has changed, especially when it comes to influencers and reviewers. A lot of it is more, what is popular, a certain discussion that garners views and money and stuff like that, instead of being honest. And that's something that I don't want to do, so that's why I'm just trying to be honest here. But basically, The story itself is actually interesting. The cinematic quality of this game is actually very good, I believe. I really do love the cinematics from what I've seen, like the lip syncing, the facial animations, but it's so obvious when it transitions from gameplay to cinematic, and I don't know why so much money went into the cinematics, but I guess it's because they are trying to make it more of a story game, and as a story game, I do think it's actually quite well done, because the cinematics here are pretty good. I really love that idea of, figuring out what, is going on with a corrupt system and stuff like that, and it's really captured that story, I believe, from what I've seen. But there are some negatives to that as well, like it does the most traditional, boring, and safe, like mini games now and then, but also it has stupid things like quick time events that just, are completely mind-numbing and stupid, and, this is like for the most casual of casual gamers when it comes to depth of the game, and even if the story has something meaningful to say, it's hard to see that when it's surrounded by all of this kind of, bloat and just, badly delivered content. So, like I said, the industry really does need to check itself. Gamers and consumers need to be more, considerate and supporting each other instead of, dragging each other down with, like our tribal opinions. It's okay to like something and for someone else not to dislike it. What's important is we unify, so we stop, companies getting away with this kind of, deception when it comes to gaming, so we can get back on the right track of high quality games being released day one. But that is my MindsEye review. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, and I think it's going to trick a lot of people, yeah, it's just kind of sad how it was marketed, and honestly I wouldn't touch this at all, and I would heavily wait for it to be fixed and for it to be, added content and updates, because as of right now, this is pretty much, like a complete fabrication of a game. So thanks for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this MindsEye review. If you did, please do like the video. That really does help me out, as I am trying to go full time with this channel, and it's very difficult right now. So please do consider supporting me by dropping, a thanks, or just checking out my music, or becoming a member. But thank you so much, my wise ones. For returning wise ones, you mean absolutely everything, and that's the whole reason I do this, is to have a conversation with you guys down below in the comments, so please sound off, and thanks for watching. I'll be seeing you in the next video. Peace out.